Part of the reason there is even a debate about it being circular or not is that there isn't a great explanation of what the numbers actually represent. So you've done the reporting about, what Dean has written on the terminal on OpenAI. If we just take SK as a case study, it's $500 billion or $500 billion. And at some point in that conversation with Jensen, I just said, could you just explain what that number actually is? And he was like, well, sure. It's a number that represents what we, Nvidia, are going to be buying from SK Hynix in memory chips, but it also represents what SK as a group, a conglomerate, will be spending on their own AI infrastructure, and then everything in between that we co-invest in. And there's no real explanation of okay, so you're giving them dollars, or are they giving you dollars, or are you basically just tallying it up and calling it even at the end of the day? And that's a big part of it, right? That people just don't know the directional travel of those dollars. In the OpenAI case, what we're reporting is much more explicit, where Nvidia is both guaranteeing and backstopping, but also providing financing for AI data centers that at the end of the day, they do use Nvidia's technology. And that is by definition circular.
Okay, so going back to that deal or agreement or partnership with SK Hynix worth more than $500 billion, do we know if that ever actually happens? I mean, it's one thing to announce that you have these grand plans. It's another thing for the two companies to execute on it.
So it's over many years. It's over time, but there's no set deadline or time frame. It is literally bucket one, Nvidia buying memory chips from SK Hynix. SK Hynix has 60% market share in high bandwidth memory. But SK Group, with SK Telecom underneath it, is a big deployer of data center capacity. And where do they buy their, not just GPUs, but their servers from? Now from Nvidia. So it's a multi-year thing. It won't show up in any one company's one-year financials. But let me just be honest with you, Scarlett, about it. Jensen and Nvidia, they like big round numbers. And it's really normal for them to announce it in that way.
What happened? On Monday, Nvidia's stock fell by almost 5%, which had an impact on the chip industry as a whole. Apple overtook Nvidia as the most valuable public business in the world as a result of the downturn. On Monday, memory manufacturers fell, with Micron and SK Hynix down more than 2% and 7% respectively, while peer chipmaker AMD also saw a dip of more than 5%. Why the move was made? Concerns regarding circular financing, a situation in which suppliers are also significant investors in their clients, have been rekindled by reports that the corporation is in talks to guarantee $250 billion in funding for OpenAI to lease computer power related to a U.S. data center project. According to Bloomberg, the possible guarantee would be among the biggest of its kind for the chipmaker. Additionally, on Friday, the AI chipmaker announced a strategic partnership for a $500 billion-plus project, including AI factories and next-generation memory, with the conglomerate SK Group, the parent company of SK Hynix. The industry is under pressure at the same time due to worries that China might be winning the AI race. ASML shares were sold off after a Chinese state-backed company started manufacturing a crucial piece of chip-making machinery in large quantities, according to the information. What you should know: concerns about demand, AI valuations, and debt are exacerbated by worries about circular investments between a chipmaker such as Nvidia and the AI developer that purchases its equipment. The cost of insuring Nvidia's debt against default for 5 years increased by the highest amount ever on Monday, according to Bloomberg, raising concerns about growing funding obligations. Additionally, investors' concerns about the return on investment of AI infrastructure spending have intensified. Following the tech giant's announcement last week that it would increase its capital spending outlook as it develops its AI infrastructure, Alphabet's stock fell precipitously. Investors are now anticipating Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta's earnings this week, all of which are anticipated to reveal additional rises in AI-related spending. However, businesses that produce semiconductors and related equipment would face difficulties if there was any indication of a downturn. Nvidia paid $5 billion to Safe Superintelligence Inc., SSI, one of the chipmaker's biggest funding agreements of the AI boom, according to a Bloomberg article. In addition to the cash, SSI will have access to Nvidia's next-generation Vera Rubin AI platform, which the companies claim could significantly increase the startup's processing power. Ilya Sutskever, chief executive and co-founder of SSI, stated, "We have research that is worthy of scaling up, and having access to a big Nvidia computer will let us do so." The SSI investment is part of Nvidia's expanding portfolio of investments in AI startups, which also includes bets on businesses developing the infrastructure needed for large-scale model training and deployment, including OpenAI, Nebius, CoreWeave, IREN, and others. Nvidia's semiconductors, networking, and compute platforms are also used by many of these companies. Some market experts, such as Michael Burry, have been increasingly critical of that approach, claiming that it creates an intricately linked ecosystem in which Nvidia finances businesses that go on to become significant hardware buyers. Nvidia's stock fell on Monday amid more pressure on the semiconductor industry. The information reports that China has started manufacturing its own 193-nanometer immersion DUV lithography systems. The first machines are anticipated to be sent this year to SMIC, Huahong, and CXMT. In the meantime, memory producer CXMT became the most valuable newly listed firm in mainland China, after its shares reportedly increased by more than 5 times during its stock market debut. However, retail traders questioned if the chip sell-off on Monday was excessive. Given that local output is still constrained and still lags behind ASML's cutting-edge lithography technology, some users claimed that the market was responding to the China DUV news too violently. With worries about the sustainability of AI expenditure reviving throughout markets, investors are also anticipating a new round of U.S. tech earnings this week, including 4 of the Magnificent Seven. Apple and Amazon are expected to report on Thursday, after Microsoft and Meta on Wednesday. The same headlines about tech companies producing their own processors and diversifying away from Nvidia's expensive products are all too familiar to tech investors. Given that tech companies have the means to invest in their own chip-making capabilities, it is initially simple to understand why such a scenario could seem concerning. These are not very novel developments, though. Additionally, there are numerous other chip makers that provide alternatives, such as Broadcom and Advanced Micro Devices. However, the actual figures don't actually support concerns that Nvidia is facing significant difficulties, at least not just yet. Its market share and growth rate both continue to be robust. It also begs the question of whether the stock, which has a market capitalization of around $5 trillion and is among the most valuable in the world, is still a good deal. Large quantities of money are being invested by tech companies in data centers, and their build-out operations require the newest and greatest chips. It's amazing that businesses continue to choose Nvidia despite an increasing number of alternatives. This is demonstrated by a startling statistic from Futurum Group, which reveals that Nvidia holds over 95% of the market for data center GPUs. It's an incredible number that demonstrates how important the company's chips are. And given that Nvidia has been performing more than well in its most recent quarters, the company's growth rate undoubtedly supports that. Even though Nvidia's market capitalization, which is sometimes over $5 trillion, may appear large, the company's remarkable revenue and profit growth demonstrate how cheaply priced the stock is at the moment. It is trading at less than 24 times its projected future earnings, according to analyst predictions. The typical S&P 500 stock, on the other hand, is worth 21 times its expected profits. This indicates that it is only somewhat more expensive than the typical stock in the broad index. Even if competition ultimately hinders its growth, Nvidia may have even more prospects in the long run. It can make significant investments in new technology and acquisitions in the future to spur even more growth thanks to the enormous profits and cash flow it's producing now and in prior years. Because of this, it might be a fantastic long-term investment for any portfolio. On July 27, 2026, Jim Cramer began Mad Money with a cautionary tale drawn straight from his own trading background. "This bazaar is haunted by a ghost, the specter of the year 2000, he said to the audience before discussing the rumored finance agreement between Nvidia and OpenAI, which has become the focal point of the current AI cycle. Nvidia's commitment of $250 billion in funding for OpenAI data centers is what worries Cramer. According to him, the structure is similar to the vendor financing agreements that contributed to the telecom equipment industry's collapse during the dot-com boom. Given that OpenAI is one of their major clients, it makes sense, he said. However, history exists. Boatloads of it. It is also quite detrimental. Cramer took the following fundamental lesson from 2000. We learned in 2000 that you don't lend to customers who buy your goods. Your earnings could be destroyed if they default. Telco equipment providers made enormous profits back then by financing client orders, but if customers failed, It took decades for their stocks to return to their earlier highs. He contends that the risk pattern is compatible with OpenAI's profile. OpenAI is known to be spending a lot of money and is not investment grade. Its capacity to make payments is questionable, as it has not gone public. Cramer argues that this is precisely the profile that investors disregarded in the previous round. He broadened the scope of the criticism to encompass more clients. A year ago, a large number of Nvidia AI chip purchasers had impressive balance sheets. That is no longer the case. Some people are in dire need of more funding to complete their data center build-outs, and it may not be accessible, he stated. About a week prior to the peak, Cramer's own hedge fund pulled out of 2,000 tech companies after observing buyer balance sheets become hideous. Nvidia is still a financial powerhouse. With data center revenue of $75.246 billion and non-GAAP EPS of $1.87 compared to a $1.77 consensus, the business announced Q1 FY 2027 revenue of $81.615 billion, up 85.2% year over year. The non-GAAP gross margin remained at 75.0%. The board increased the quarterly dividend from $0.01 to $0.25 and approved an additional $80.0 billion in buybacks. The company's Q1 FY27 8K filing contains information. The build-out of AI factories is the biggest infrastructural growth in human history, according to CEO Jensen Huang, who has characterized the event as generational. Cramer's concern about counterparty risk is anchored by the company's $119.0 billion overall supply-related agreements, which include $30.0 billion in multi-year cloud service commitments. According to Cramer, the tape is verifying the danger. Despite encouraging news, Nvidia stock dropped 10 points, and despite significant transaction announcements, supplier stocks ended Friday much lower. On July 27th, Nvidia finished at $196.51, down 3.33% for the week and 4.99% for the session. Additionally, Cramer pointed out that Michael Lewis, a strategist at JP Morgan, recently compared the present to the dot-com period, concluding that they are too close for comfort. The macro environment provided additional impetus. A 9% decrease in oil prices in a single session contributed to a decline in interest rates and an increase in stocks, the kind of tape rotation that typically conceals more serious structural issues. That tension is reflected in Reddit sentiment. With 4,824 upvotes and 622 comments, the most popular Nvidia post of the week claimed that 34% of the S&P is made up of 10 stocks placing the same wager. Cramer underlined that he continues to think highly of Nvidia. The financing arrangement is what he objects to. I watched the film. I was in a film. In the end, I'm not interested in the sequel. Despite having all the money in the world, Nvidia shouldn't make these promises. Just the past. That's all. Just history, he remarked. As Q2 FY 2027 sales projection of $91.0 billion collides with growing scrutiny of who is financing whom, investors will want to keep an eye on the stock.
You were right about this rolling recovery, and I think you were early because people thought it was more likely that there was going to be problems in the labor market, and we might be in a recession. You said we already went through a kind of a rolling recession. Now we're in a rolling recovery, and you still think that's the case?
Absolutely, and now we're going into the next stage. So this week we addressed that by, just like in 2021, right? You had the big recovery off of COVID. The market then about halfway, middle of 21, we had a peak in the revision factors, right? And we've talked about this over the last month or two. One of the reasons we've been negative on semiconductors is because the peak rate of change is now in for revisions. And that is now leading to what we call a quality rotation. So the broadening out story is still working, but it's morphing, just like you were just talking about the earnings, right? We're seeing, Sherwin-Williams, do really well. And then we see some of these tech stocks put up great numbers, but they sell off. So what is that all about? It's all about the peak rate of change. It doesn't mean the CapEx cycle is over. It just means we over-discounted it. Stocks trade in the future. They discounted a lot of this, just like a year ago. Multiples went up. Now multiples are coming down in anticipation of a deceleration next year. So this is the adjustment we were expecting.
So initially, you figured that it was going to get out of some of the Mag 7 and mega cap stocks into economically sensitive areas. That's already happened.
Well, the early cycle. So remember, the economy goes early cycle, mid cycle, late cycle through a recovery. The early recovery part of this rolling recovery is now behind us. Okay. By the way, it doesn't mean that all those stocks have to go to zero. It just means that they are no longer the leadership
quality group. Sherwin-Williams is quality?
It can be. I mean, we posted a list of they're across a lot of different industries. It can be. It's not so much sector specific. It's now more company specific. And as you know, the hyperscalers, the reason why those stocks have underperformed is because while the earnings have been good, the free cash flow generation is atrocious. And so the market has punished them. I think a lot of that is kind of behind us, and that's now they're going after semiconductors and some of the storage names. That also is pretty well advanced. I mean, these corrections are pretty severe. Look what happened in Korea last night. So now that people are getting, kind of agreeing with us on this, I'm probably more inclined to say we're probably closer to this correction being over. And then ironically, the S&P 500 is the highest quality index in the world. Okay, let's be clear about that. But at the end of these corrections, you typically get, a pop on even the index. So I still think we're chopping around. My guess is because of the Fed uncertainty, because of the war uncertainty still, we're going to chop around for another month or so. But I'm still very constructive in where the S&P ends up for the full year.
The S&P is not even down 3% from its high.
It's pretty amazing, right? Yeah. You think about the corrections we've had and in the leaders.
Right.
And that is a good sign, though, Becky, that there is a pretty good underlying backdrop for the economy, in my view.
So quality defined just means visible, big, well-known, probably not completely overvalued because of, like a meme stock or some type of story stock. So there's actual fundamentals underlying the stock prices. Is that what you mean by quality? Could be anywhere.
We'd like to be
in any group.
It could be in any group, but we'd like to be a little more specific and quantitative. So what we mean is it's earnings quality, and there's also balance sheet quality.
And balance sheet.
What the market's focused on now is earnings quality, free cash flow generation, earnings stability, earnings predictability. Those are the key features.
So the 500 top stocks.
Well, 500 top stocks, top quintile, the top 100 stocks on a quality basis are now starting to outperform, which is right on schedule with the recovery, in my view.
As far as worries go, we don't know. A sustained rise in oil would possibly make you nervous.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it is making the market nervous. I mean, that's the final.
Could it get worse?
It could get a little worse in here. I'm pretty comfortable saying that 7,000 on the S&P 500 will be defended. Okay, and if it gets defended there, I'd be pretty. If we get down on those levels, I'm going to be very aggressive. Reiterating our bullish view for the full year. I still think we can hit 8,000 by year end, even if we go to 7,000 first. I mean, that's our general view.
And also, you don't expect Warsh and company to do anything, but even if they did, we end higher by the end of the year at 8,000.
Yeah, because I don't think if they do, let's say they hike this week, which is not our view, but there's a 50-50 shot on that. Okay. They're not going to hike 3 times. Okay, so in other words,
65-35. You said 50-50.
Yeah.
65-35.
But let's talk about the insurance cuts. Everybody's they're insurance cuts.
Oh yeah.
Why is this an insurance hike? It's kind of the same idea. This is not 2021.
So you're not worried about a progressive move higher. This would be something to slow inflation and be able to get some chips on the table and say we've done this.
Yeah, we've backed our serious view that we're going to defend inflation. Okay, yeah. The credibility issue. And by the way, we're still learning about Kevin Warsh and how he's going to communicate with us. We don't really know that. And that digestion, by the way, a lot of people were predicting this, including us, that when the new Fed chair comes in, you get market turbulence. That's what we're having. So this is not surprising that people are uncomfortable still with how he's going to talk to us and how he's going to manage the reaction function. But I do think a 25 basis point hike is sort of an insurance hike. It also allows them to keep control of the back end of the bond market, which in my view is the most important thing. It shows credibility that they're going to be willing to fight this if they need to. I don't think they're going to need to hike 3 or 4 times, but if they hiked once, it would be negative probably in the short term. But to me, that would not derail us.